here.
Not really, but it's a pleasure to be here, and I hope that this talk doesn't bore you after learning such esoteric things as neutrino mass and mass matrices that are renormalization theory and everything else that we talk about here. But this is going to be something somewhat different. And we have this new system has evolved from what I originally did with that first classroom that Frank described. And I put it aside way back in 1985. I programmed this thing and got it all going. And if you want a piece of humor, I call my network for that classroom the internet. And that's actually documented in 1985 when I sent a proposal to NSF. So it wasn't Al Gore that invented the internet, it was me. But anyway, we tried to get this to come in from the side, but we could only do it individually. So he did it for just a few of the slides. The problem that we're going to address today is education. And we have an infinite amount of material that we present to students. We have all of the books that exist, the videotapes, everything else. But what, in my opinion, is missing is the concept of assessment. Do we know, after we've presented all these things, whether somebody's learning anything or not? We can track the mustard and pickles for every hamburger in the United States and know exactly when it was purchased. So commercial institutions know everything. We know almost nothing about our children when they go to K through 12. And we often, as to our distress, know very little about the graduate students and what they know, or our undergraduates, and how much they have learned in our courses in mechanics and so forth like that. We give a test every so often. We get some idea. But we can't dynamically track these things, and that's really what I'm talking about here. There's a saying that if you cannot measure it, you cannot manage it. And that's a very famous saying. I don't know who it's due to in management theory, but it's obvious to everyone here. If you can't make it numeric, if you can't do a measurement, then you can't do anything with it. And of course, what I'm going to do is going to be kind of upsetting to many people, because we have our normal scenario and we're real happy with it. An instructor walks in and you talk, just like I'm talking right now. The students come in and they sit and they look and they look. Then everybody leaves and everybody's happy, no sweat. There's no stress on anybody. It's not really a job. It's so easy to do. Well, let's assume that information is given. Do we know if anything was actually accomplished? What was accomplished? What were the objectives? Did we have specific, mathematically measurable objectives for that course? And we can think here of, say, of a junior course in mechanics or something like that. Did they learn anything? Well, we can always wait a month or so for the test and then, go commit hara-kiri if the students didn't learn. But what we're about here is something very new with this new technology. We're going to address learning, not teaching. Because I'm not going to talk about how you teach. With this system, you teach any way that you want to teach. And our postulate with this QRECT system is the degree of learning is only known by the assessed responses of the questions and tasks that are given to the students. They could be very open-ended. It might be make a videotape of your dance performance, or make a scanned object, make a scanning of the diagram you did for your electrical network. But in some sense or another, you're given a question or a task and you must return that. Conclusion: if we are going to continuously monitor, we must ask questions continuously. So the whole concept here is our new technology, which has never before been possible up until over the last couple of years. You ask a question continuously in class, every few minutes, and every student responds, not that one student. So you quickly evaluate these, you grade them on the spot by the computer, and you see those grades demonstrated. And then the instructors can adjust their presentations according to the result. So for example, if I were using this system right now, I would say, and in my first slide I said what? And if we want to measure the moment of inertia of a sphere, what was the factor that we use in front? And then they put the 2/5 right in there, and I would see who understood it and who didn't. One of the great things about that process is you can see what is misunderstood. You're not really interested in the 30 people that got it. You're wondering, did those other 10 people, what did they put in? What are they thinking? And So how does it have to work? The information modules are presented. So we present some kind of information. It might be a video or a piece of a lecture. They might go and read a part of a book. Then we ask questions frequently of the teachers. Students all have to respond using a personal electronic device. What is that? It's something like the iPhone, or it could be a netbook, or any type of device that goes on the internet works with our system. And the short responses can be graded and displayed instantly. And these continuous assessments are recorded and distributed and managed for us. So we don't have to do anything with grades. It's all taken care of. In fact, what we'll find as we go along is for the short answer questions and even long answers, which I hope will surprise you, what we can do is I can stand here and ask questions. And if they're valid, unique, single response answers, the computer will figure out the answers to the questions. For those that are valid and not ambiguous, grade them, store the results, and as soon as class is over, when I close my computer, it emails all your grades for the day to the students. Today I did that with my class that I'm teaching, Physics 201. I have 31 students in there, and these 31 students were sitting down there taking their exam, and I could come up here and I could look on my screen, I could watch the answers appear in a spreadsheet. For each student, I knew exactly what was happening and what their grade was at that point. For each question, I could see how many people were getting it and whether it was being misunderstood. I could make corrections at that point. So these are continuous assessments. Now normally, our costs mandate large classes, and we're seeing that more and more. I got to the point last year where I had a class of 326 students in Physics 201 and 202. It's just overwhelming. I don't even know if these are the people that are enrolled in the course that come and take the exams. They could be their friends or just somebody they purchase on the internet. Hey, come and take this exam. But we have to have multiple choice questions because we can't grade that much. It's hard to write multiple choice exams that have decent incorrect answers. That always bugs me. I hate to do that. I hate to make up those tests. And so they're laborious to construct. They're expensive to vet. Nobody chooses an answer. You've got to get rid of it and really, ideally, put another answer in. It allows easy guessing. Students guess all the time. It's really a poor measure of progress. What I want is I want to ask a question, solve the following problem, and give me the thermal conductivity, and I want a number. And I don't want to give you a whole set of right and wrong numbers for you to choose from. I just want you to type the number into your device. So our new technology now allows a new paradigm shift in our assessment. These small individual devices allow a student, and so what I'm really talking about is the future. I'm not talking about today. I mean, it's working today. But pretty soon, in a couple of years, we'll turn around and everyone who comes to any meeting or any assessment, any meeting or any class, will be able to sit there, pull out their iPhone or iTouch, go onto the internet, and enter a response to a system. Now, having that, we can collect all of these responses electronically, and we can use iPhones, iTouch, netbooks, anything with a full keyboard input. Now, these are instantly graded. We get attendance and tardy. It automatically takes attendance for the class. We can put a merit or demerit in. I see the homework when I go to my class. I can see who's done the homework, and it's graded right there. If it's a short answer, a short string, they're instantly graded and displayed. And we're doing a new thing now that's real exciting. I have a friend that used to work with me. Many of you know Bill Campbell, and he's working on a project, and we've done about 80% of it, where we're going to use the new touch screens. And the touch screens can be used with, you can use a mouse, but you could do something like, if we think on the kindergarten level, if any of you know who Dora is, this little cartoon character and system, where's the magic mountain? Little kids that can't even speak can walk over to a touch screen and touch the magic mountain, if any of you have kids. But now let's jump up to college, and let's put a skeleton up there with 800 bones, and you start asking questions at an incredibly high rate. And you say, where's the femur? Where's the clavicle? Where's the thorax? Where's the skull? Where's the duct? And as soon as you're going, you're having to touch these. Now you can say, well, that kind of software already exists. Not in the sense that we have it, and not as easy as we have to develop it, as I'll show you. So we're going to have this positional response system. where you give your responses simply by touching the screen. And many of you are aware that the touchscreen systems that are available now with the new operating system from Microsoft, and also the things that are coming out from HP and Dell, are just truly remarkable. Even though they've been around a long time, they haven't been cheap and amenable to ordinary use. Ideally, what we'd like to have is you walk in as an instructor and you're able to just drag things around, open up new screens, throw them off to the side, bring them back, just like we can do with the iPhone. We're going to see that within the next few months. Now, how do we do long responses? We have a way that I'll discuss of how we can do responses of any length. A paragraph, a discussion. Even if you had to draw a diagram of how this Atwood's machine worked and where the forces were, you can get graded on that. You say, well, how is that possible done by a computer? Well, I have some tricks there, and I'll tell you what they are. So we could even do free-form images. So I'm envisioning that people, especially in their homework, could submit videotapes, photographs, scanned documents, and things of that nature. Audio wave files, if they're singing, if you have a singing class or whatever. There are non-graded responses in this software that are also available. We can do polling of students, like, do y'all understand or don't you understand? How many of you understand? 0 to 10. And you get a little distribution there. Oh gosh, the center of the distribution is at 1. Nobody understands what we're doing. So you can back up and you can make a change there. It allows you, in a certain sense, to maintain a one-on-one communication with your audience and see how they're responding. We can also do something else. We can maintain extensive demographic data. We can take in the students' emergency phone numbers, their zip codes, their parents' names, whether or not they've had immunization to flu. All of these kind of things can be collected effortlessly and put in the demographic file. You can also allow security things like photographs, signatures, fingerprints, voice cams, and so forth, and student comments, such as if they're absent, you want to know why they were absent, and they have to put that in, and that's done automatically. You don't manage any paper. It's automatically done for you. How does it work? Students enter the classroom with a wireless device. The instructor presents some module of information, so you talk about mechanics, you do the problem of something like the harmonic oscillator with the driving force, and then you ask questions. You can get immediate grading if you use short answer or a touchscreen response. A short answer, I mean a string that's computer comparable, or a number with a given level of accuracy. You can even, we have it where you can give order of magnitude, like how many stars are in our galaxy, and then you ask for order of magnitude only. Students instantly respond, and it grades and displays the results. So I can see on my screen, if we were doing that, every response that everyone in the class gives. All the information is managed with grades sent to the students by email as soon as the class is over. Now that's pretty neat. When the student walks out, he gets a grade, and he gets a grade for his attendance, whether it's a merit or demerit for class participation, anything you want to put in there, his homework, he sees it all, and it's printed out for him, and he can print it. This is an example of a student screen. You might have time and who your instructor is, and this is the class 14. We're working in Jones and Childers, chapter 11.1 on temperature. This student is Ralph Jackson. Here's a question shown here. You put your response in here, you put a comment in here. Or this whole screen right here might be a touch screen type of situation, and you can use that today. And we have that working, in fact, where you can touch your eye, you see an image or a photograph, and you can touch different parts to respond to the question. That's what you would see as something similar to this. What gas is exhaled resulting from metabolism, write the full name, and then you would see what that was. Must be fast there. Okay. If I look at the instructor interface, it's similar type of data at the top, and I have two things, a class lesson plan over here and a response window over here. I'm going to show those separately. I don't have them combined here. A lesson plan, anytime you walk into a class, even since he's not here, I can say it, Pavel has some kind of notes. It says, talk about renormalization theory. I mean, there's something you come in with. It may not be elaborate, or it may be 4 pages of calculations. But you have something that guides you, so you have kind of an orderly presentation. The idea is that you teach some, you ask a question. Teach some, ask a question. Teach some and ask a question. However, as we'll see, what I've got here is I've done this lesson plan in a way that's XML markup. And we're going to talk about that later. If it's in a markup language, it allows the computer to go back and say, oh, he spent 37 minutes on the harmonic oscillator with no driving force. Then he spent 18 minutes on the harmonic oscillator with a sinusoidal driving force. So you'd be able to go back and look over thousands of schools and thousands of students and teachers and see what people were doing, how well they responded, and what they had. But the idea is you have certain data that's marked up. Here's your textbook. We're on temperature, and now I give information. I talk about all this, and this is a lecture here. Then I say convert 81 degrees to Celsius. Over on the right-hand side of my instructor screen, that's in our current design, we said, okay, I want a string response with exact spelling. Weight is 8. You get 40 seconds. What gases is exhaled? There it is, carbon dioxide. 83% said that, which was 30 students. That's a probability of being correct of 94% using the internal algorithm that uses information. 5 people put carbon monoxide as something you exhale. And then there's one guy who thought it was carbon. It's just a hypothetical to get your attention here. And so this is the kind of thing that you see. So you're able to monitor what people are doing wrong, what they misunderstand. And that's a whole lot there. This is a real screen here. This is my last test. And I can sit there, and if I have a good display, I can actually read this, and it's the entire display of every question, every student. The red is wrong, the black is correct. And I can follow those down and see exactly what's happening for a whole class. I could do this for 1,000 people or 10,000 people. You wouldn't want it in the form of a matrix, but you get the statistical summary at the top in the left edge. I can also have a thing where I do cumulative grades. You just hit a button and get another screen. I say, well, I wonder how people are doing. And you get each of the students for your whole class listed here and say, I'm going to choose the day, the week, the month, or the term. Click one of those, and immediately you see their class grades, their homework grades, their exam grades, their attendance grades, and all combined in that linear combination that you choose that you want to weight through. Grades are emailed to the student. They see each of the questions, how much credit they got, what their response was, what the correct response was, and what the question was. I mean, it's idiot-proof. They get home and they can't say, you know, gosh, I got halfway through the semester and I didn't understand anything. I didn't know I was flunking. They know every day exactly what they did. The advantages of the system, it maintains engagement of all the students, providing reinforcement. So it constantly is reinforcing it, and you're able to reinforce if you don't understand. Emulates one-on-one instruction, manages their attendance, their grades, everything, all the data. It instantly informs the instructors of incorrect answers, and it tracks the class progress against standards. You have a massive amount of data. If you stop and think about it, it's easy to do a back of an envelope calculation. And what you have is you look at if you think about it, about 1/3 of the population is in school. They're learning something from age 0 to 25. You're either in college, or you have preschool training from your parents, or you're in military training, or you're in a corporation. And so that's about 1/3 of your life. And so if you think there are 300 million people in the United States, it's 100 million students all the time. And now you're going to ask each one of those 100 million a question every few minutes. And so you can look at the amount of data and the correlations among the data and say, wow, this is like getting a Hubble Space Telescope and looking at what is happening with education. And that data has never been in existence before. We use expert consensus for the short answers, and what we do is, it's kind of an information theory, if you all are familiar with it. If you imagine 2 sets of equations, if we know the students' grades, like for example, you've got a class, they're halfway through the semester, you know that Bob has an 81 so far in all of his questions and exams. That means he's got a probability of 81 of answering the next question correctly. And now you get 5 responses down there for the next question. Well, Bob voted for it, and John voted for it, so it's the probability that he's right times the probability that he's right, but Sarah didn't vote for it, so it's the probability she's wrong, 1 minus that probability. And you multiply all these probabilities out, and you can predict very accurately what the answer is. You do simulations, and they're not hard to do on a computer. And you find out that this thing is incredibly accurate. If the question is unambiguous and it's not too difficult for the class. So the system learns. So it learns, and it can guess the next question, then it gives the grade. So now the question is, if I start this system with these two sets of nonlinear equations, the grades and the right answers, if I know the answers, I can determine the grades. If I know the grades, I can estimate the probability of the answers. And so what we do is we iterate that for a self-consistent solution. What we do in the continuous case is just like Frank would do with the mass of a proton or the neutrino or something like that. These different experimentalists come in, and they all have these Gaussians, and the Gaussians have a certain width. Mine's answer is good. The mass of the neutrino is this, give or take this fraction. Mine's good this with this width. You multiply all these Gaussians together. There's some other tricks you can use. And then you determine that this is the most probable with this distribution. Well, this system learns what your Gaussian error is and whether you have bias in your expected answer and so forth. So it learns that, and it'll correct for your bias. So again, what I can do is I can sit up here and ask questions, and the computer will figure them out. And I can override them. I say, make that wrong, make this right, just by clicking the mouse. But for the most part, it works. On the last test, my system got every question correct. I didn't even work the problems. I just asked a whole set of questions, 32 questions. I did that again today. I gave an exam. I didn't even work the problems. My students will know how to work the problems. They'll get it right. If they can't get it right, I'll eliminate the problem because it was too hard. Now, how do we do that for extended responses? That's a little bit different. Okay, so I say, in Scene 4, Act 3, Macbeth came in and was startled by Othello. Why was he startled? In 25 words or less. Okay, whatever. So you type something, or describe why the recent paper by so-and-so may be informative about the nature of dark matter or dark energy. 25 or 50 words. So they type something in. And then what you do is automatically this is sent to 5 other students, N other students, whatever you choose here. So this one student A, his response is sent to these other 5 people, and they assign a grade. Then what we do is we give him the grade that's the combined weighted assessments of all those other students. But what it does is it tracks whether the students are lowering or raising with some bias the other students. So it'll correct that bias in their Gaussian and move it back to a central point. Now, if they're random and just all over the place and not trying to do a good grade, then it'll give them, of course, a standard deviation in terms of norm standard deviations. It's spread way out, and they don't have much of an effect on anything. So the identities are removed, and the assessing students are given grades on their ability to assess. So if for example, Frank typed this up and it was sent to 5 of y'all, then y'all would get a grade based upon how well you were able to estimate the grade based upon the mean response of the group, weighted according to information theory. So Frank would not only get your composite grade, each of you would get a grade. And I think that could be important because I'm suggesting here that students really learn at a much deeper level if they learn what other students are doing. If you saw a calculation on a paper and you photograph it with your iPhone and you say, that's my work for this PhD problem, and you submit it, and then that's automatically given to 5 other students, and they have to assign a grade, 0 to 10 or 0 to 100, for that work. They learn a lot in saying, oh, this is wrong, but this is right, da-da-da. And they can then submit that. And I suggest to you that people learn a lot by looking at how other people make mistakes or what their responses are. And so that's a process I think is good. The insertion of assessments by some of the professors brings that back to a normalization. And so you have some people who are teachers and teachers' aides or professors would come in and say, okay, 1 out of every 20 of these questions I'm going to assess, and that kind of can be used to do a correlation and pull the norm of the students back. What's the relevance and value of the questions? Well, you can ask questions and they can be really hard, and it doesn't mean that they have any value. Can I ask for the mass of some grain of sand? It's meaningless. It's just some random grain of sand. But if I ask for the mass of the proton, of the neutrino, it's overwhelming in its importance. So one method is to, you can have, say, how important are these questions for this domain of knowledge? And one method is to have standardized questions. Those are things that people have picked as being important measures of that topic, like on angular momentum. The second method is to ask the instructors to go through and rate the value of those questions. So we have a method where teachers can go through and read these things and they become the question. What is the value of this question in measuring the concept of angular momentum at the junior level in a physics course? 8, 2, 5, 10, whatever it might be. The instructors get evaluations on their ability to evaluate, exactly like you were doing in the log responses. Student grades are then computed as a weighted linear combination. I think many of you can see where I'm going with this. Down at the end, we're looking for an engine, an algorithm that will take over this amorphous, nebulous assessment of grades and compute the correlations, look at the objective functions, and figure out the right weightings for everything, and assign the grades. Course objectives. Normally the instructors just assign some intuitive but arbitrary weights to different things. Lab is this, first exam is this, second exam is this question is this question. We just make it all kind of equal, or we use some kind of intuition. We don't spend a lot of time, but the option is available to, of course, to do that, but we can actually bring in the importance of different values for different assessments. And this latter option can be used to automatically assign relative weights. Do y'all see what I'm saying here? I'm saying that the system can adjust the weights by how well these various questions correlate with the standards. So if we have 5 questions that are standard questions for understanding angular momentum at the freshman level, and we have 12 other questions over here, we can look at how well these questions correlate with our standard questions on that subject, and therefore give them a metric for it. And we can automate the entire relative weighting of these grade components. Okay, how do we link these to domain standards? Well, somehow or another, what we'd like to do is we're taking on something kind of big here. We're saying we're looking at all of education. How could we classify all of knowledge? Is there some way to classify all existing knowledge? Well, actually, there kind of is. And we'll get to that in just a minute. But first, as a precursor to that, we use this thing I call a class lesson plan, and the instructors use notes to guide them in some kind of orderly presentation I mentioned a while ago. We can optimally think of that as consisting of these modules of information. You might say, here's a link, go watch this video. Here, go read this text. Now listen to our lecture. Now look at this picture and figure out such and such. Now answer these questions. That's kind of like the lesson plan I envisioned. But these are unstructured, and therefore we can't analyze those and determine anything really. So what we want to do is a way to track those assessments. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to categorize all knowledge in these small domains. And how could we possibly do that? It sounds like something Google would try to do, categorizing knowledge domains. Well, I'm going to suggest that almost everything that's taught, there's some textbook that's relatively appropriate for that topic at that level. And that textbook has an ISBN number or a Library of Congress number. And so what I'm saying is that we could take the ISBN number, dot the chapter, dot the section, and say, this book by Simon, this book by Goldstein, chapter 4, section 3 is the best explanation of what I'm talking about today. And so we put that code in, and that will let us later on go back and look at correlations between what we learned in Goldstein, what we learned in Simon, what we learned in Muller's book on relativity, all on mechanics, and cross-reference those. It gives us a coding methodology for doing that. And it's already established, so we don't have to do anything. For the state schools, they have standards, and many of you don't know what this is. I didn't for a long time. We have a standard called South Carolina Mathematics 5th grade Objective 2 Indicator 3. They have a code like this for South Carolina. Most of the states have that. And this is how they categorize all these things. And this is, the student will be able to add two fractions where such and such properties, or multiply two simple fractions that are both proper. So we can also use these state standards. So as we look at this lesson plan, I imagine what I'm envisioning is you put in book references, ISBN chapter and section. You say, I'm talking about today, Jones and Childers, chapter 14, section 3. That's what I'm working on. It might be the whole day. I just put it at the top. And then I have 8 topics I'm talking about. I ask some questions. Then we can go back and we'll know exactly how much time and how much effort was spent on all these different things. If we have state standards in K through 12, we look at that too. The class lesson plan would, of course, therefore include the entire state's, the course syllabus, the exam dates, and everything else. If it's unstructured text or notes, it's not amenable to study. We can't do a computerized study of something unless it has a markup language. The markup language is generally accepted for everything is, of course, the generalized markup language of which XML comes from and HTML first came from to mark up the web. XML is going to replace all of our markup language eventually for the web. So XML is a good starting place for this markup, and that's what I'm proposing. By using these markup tags for various things like this textbook, this topic, this information, this web link, this question, and so forth, we can structure this whole thing. This would give us a paradigm for studying. You could sit at a computer and watch every student in South Carolina and how they performed on each chapter of each section every day within minutes of their going to class. This is why I say it's like a Hubble Space Telescope. It shows you a structure that's so fine with incredible resolution on what's being done. And then for the first time, we could really apply scientific principle. This textbook doesn't work. This teacher is no good. They need to be fired. This teacher has fantastic videos. We need to use those because the students who use those videos or those links or these things from the Discovery Channel, we get incredible results. You can do all that with statistics. So we're going to generate these things. We can actually almost generate these things from textbooks. I haven't actually implemented this, but I could envision that if we had Holiday and Resnick in electronic form, we could put this in. I mean, I could write this code, but other people can write it a lot better than me nowadays. And it goes through and it finds the chapters and the sections. And under each chapter and section, it finds the keywords that are in color or italics or underlined, puts those out there, and it builds the class lesson plan. These are the topics. Then you would go in, it could divide that, say I'm going to do Holiday and Resnick over a 1-year period, it divided up into lectures. So it's a way to script an entire textbook for a course. We haven't tried that, but that's basically what we do. I mean, when I teach a course, I look at the table of contents, and I modify that some, and I come up with a syllabus for the course. So that's the kind of thing I'm imagining there. So the class lesson plan overview would have markup tags that will allow the administrators to know minute-by-minute progress of all the students. By linking student performance to weighted vetted questions, and then to look at explicit information modules identified by ISBN number, chapter, and section, we would really know how much time was spent on everything and what the results were, something we don't have any idea of now. For the first time, scientific method could be applied to education rather than isolated studies. Peer evaluations, we have a way to do a peer evaluation that's kind of neat. Something that's important, kind of like the way the students evaluate faculty, but let's look at faculty evaluating faculty, and Scheiden back there has to sit down and evaluate all of the faculty once each year. But what if we had it in any organization, a questionnaire, and I have one, I'm not going to show it to you, but it's a standardized kind of questionnaire. Does the person have the knowledge? Do they have the intelligence for this job? Are they dedicated? Do they have the right ethics? That kind of thing, a 0 to 10 thing on multiple questions. And now you rate your subordinates, your peers, and your superiors. Boy, we'd really like to rate some of those superiors, wouldn't we? And what it would do is in rating someone, it would be like the rest of them, applying this algorithm. It would say if you're rating everybody low so you'll look good, it'll find that bias and adjust that bias in the Gaussians and raise your vote up. Or if you're trying to make everyone look good because they're your friends, it'll find that bias and lower it. And if you're just random, by random I mean you're off base with respect to all of how everyone else judges them, then it gives you a wide Gaussian and you don't count them much. Anyway, we have that. Expert consensus I've pretty much described already. If we didn't have that, it would overwhelm. We could say that this whole QRECT system, just as it is, without any expert consensus, becomes a pretty good system for bringing in all this data. But if you had all this data, you couldn't grade it. It's like giving an exam every day. You couldn't manage this. So without a system that will do this for you, that will use those short answers or will give things to other students and let them evaluate it, you'd be lost in the amount of data that you have. And so this expert consensus, while it's not flawless, it provides a vast improvement in the assessments. And we have a methodology built in that would handle Einstein, where everybody else, you say, well, there's a saying that many of you have heard, the majority is always wrong. And that certainly was true when Einstein came along. And so what we have is we have a way in here that if a student objects to the way the expert consensus evaluated them, they can form that objection. And then it comes to the instructor, or even several instructors, and can be reevaluated. In other words, you have a chance, even if the computer weighted other people's opinions to you in the wrong way, you have a way to get out of that. I've described how this works with probability theory for the short answer strings. I've described it for the numerical responses pretty well. I might mention how it's used with the touch screen and why that's different. I don't know if I have that here. I don't think I have that there. But anyway, the way the touch screen, if I come across it in a minute, you can say, well, you know, this touch screen, that's been around since somebody hit no cheese or yes cheese on the hamburger, 10 years ago on the touch screens at McDonald's. But what you have to do to build that, if you're a teacher, is you have to go in and find the exact section for which they get credit and which they don't get credit. Let's imagine we took a picture of a class and we're trying to get the third graders to recognize their friends. So we want them to know. You'd say, where's Bob Jackson? And they'd look at their little screens and they'd touch Bob Jackson. Where's Sally Smith? They'd touch Sally Smith. You know what you have to do that? You have to build all these little rectangles around their faces of what's credit and what isn't credit. But using the expert consensus, a weighted consensus, you simply give it to a class, and if they know the answer, you'll get a clustering, and we take that clustering and we use that to be the right answer to the question. In fact, we can even give, let's say, okay, here's a set of animals. You're giving it to little kids. Here's the giraffe and the lion and the tiger and the cat and the dog and so on. Where's the dog? And we look, as they all touch the dog on their screen, we get a whole set of points. We bring back the X, Y coordinates for that, find the median of that. We actually do more than that. We know how smart each student is and how good they are. So what we do is we do something like the center of mass. And it's a center of intelligence. And we weight their positions based upon their probability of being right using information theory. Anyway, what we do is we get a weighted distribution of those points, kind of like center of mass. And then we can say, if you're in the 2 standard deviations, you get full credit. If you're within 3 standard deviations, you get 5% credit. If you're outside 3 standard deviations, you get no credit. However you want to do it, you can carve out your own credit system based upon the proximity to the center point. So what is different there? A teacher, like a 4th grade teacher, could take a photograph of the class, or take a photograph or a scan of the animals. The people over in biology could take a picture, a scanned picture of the skeleton of the human body, and take that and immediately throw it in there and start asking 500 questions on every bone. And the class, the anatomy class, knowing the bones, would find those coordinates. And once you've done that, you know where all the positions are. So you train the system rather than having to go in there and meticulously draw rectangles around each thing. Okay, here are just a few of the extra features. I'm doing pretty well with my time. A lot of times we can't think of an answer. Somebody asks me a question, they say, in order of mass, what's the fifth moon of Saturn or Jupiter? I don't know. I could guess if I saw the names, you know, fifth one, maybe the second one. Anyway, what we can do is in the system, we have it where you can ask a question, you get all these responses back, and then we can flip it and ask it again, but give it as a multiple choice. So every student gets it, and they get the list of responses plus none of the above. So it gives you an optional way of asking questions.
How about Enceladus?
How about what?
How about Enceladus?
I can't hear him.
How about Enceladus?
The moon of Saturn.
Huh?
Enceladus.
They give you
Moon of
the
Saturn.
name of the moon and you don't really care.
Oh,
By the way, who cares?
That's what it is.
Who cares? You can call him.
I should have known you'd come in with the name of the
Number
moon.
5. Numero 5.
Here is an interesting thing that we do. This bothers some people, and so we don't have to do it. But the idea is we can monitor the state of the student. What we do is, once we have this much data, we can do some incredible things. We can watch the typing speed. And we, of course, looked at this in DARPA. There were some people at University of California that were doing this, as I recall, looking at the pattern that a person uses on a computer in their typing and identifying the person with that. So you've got somebody in a tank, and they're typing along on their computer, bringing in satellite data. It's all highly classified. All of a sudden, somebody shoots them in the side of the head that jumped in the back of the tank or came in the back of the tent, and now they're on the system getting privileged information. Well, we know that that's not Bob Jones. Bad choice of words. We know that's not Sam Smith typing there.
You chose something.
We know it's somebody else. How? Because the pattern of the way they hit the keys is different. Well, here's what we do here, is we don't use anything that sophisticated, but we track how Johnny Smith has been keying his responses in. We look at his error rate, and we look at his typing speed. And when his typing speed falls down 1 standard deviation, we say, something wrong with Johnny. His parents are getting a divorce, his girlfriend left him, his friends had got him on drugs. I don't know what's wrong. But for 3 days now, he's been typing 1 standard deviation below. Maybe he's got the flu. We don't know. Just send the teacher over and say, Johnny, what's bothering you? Something's wrong. And this is kind of like
He could have been simply drunk all the time.
Huh?
He could have been simply drunk. It's the
Yeah.
solution. We are talking about soldiers. This is the only, recreation that they have.
Well, we can look at what we call the state of the student. We can also look at all kinds of other things. You look at this. We don't, let's see, the student can be identified to the instructor so that individual attention can be given. There's some other things we can do. If we do this lesson plan like this, once we turn it loose, and we've got modules like we do in astronomy, so here's a recorded module of information from the universe series, here are the questions, da-da-da. Then with this XML markup language, we turn it loose. And if they can't answer these questions, they're routed back to do more homework. They're routed back to do something else. And that can be automated within the system. So you can have, once you've run the classes and made some recordings of these modules of information, turn it loose and let Johnny go and learn at the 9th grade level when he's only in the 5th grade. That XML language lets you do that and lets you do the routing in the computer that chooses where you go back to, which module, which chapter, which section, and you have to do more homework or so, whatever. Demographic profile analysis, we keep track of the gender, age, grade, and things like the natural language. We have a lot of students in the United States that English is not their natural language, and they are They're struggling with that. And if English is not their natural language, then what we can do is we can say, oh, the students who are female don't do as well on this, but they excel on this. The males are not doing as well. Spanish students are not doing as well here if English was not their natural language. We can look at the demographic profiles of the performance and address those things in education. I missed something there. If we had the full information on the demographic data, we could look at things like medical dosage for ADD. We could say, okay, he was on this dosage of an ADD medication, and he was performing at this level, but now all of a sudden his dosage changed and his performance went way down. There's no way any pharmaceutical company has that type of ability to study what happens with different types of medication, or the influence of those medications on cognitive processes. This would give you the data where you could do that. And of course you can make this doubly blind and everything else so that you never know who is who. You can just look at the statistics like we do with the other things. I talked here about the touch screen and that expert consensus part. Has a lot of application for like young children especially, because young children can point to things and touch them on a touch screen long before they can speak, and certainly long before they can type things in. So this gives us a way we could learn Spanish, like with Dora. How many of you know what Dora is? Anybody? Yeah, 4 people there got children that age. I'm a grandparent of a Dora person, and when I get home at night, when we have our grandchild, Dora is on 7/24. It's just something horrible. I mean, I and the grandchild both know everything that Dora's going to say, and she says it. Monkey, bluebird, da-da-da. You don't know that yet, Frank?
No.
It's for little kids. It's some horrible thing from Disney World.
My grandchildren are already grown up.
Yeah, they're older. But anyway, young children can point and indicate things as a means of communication. And you know what we can have is our touchscreen system is designed with a set of prompts. And so you have an interplay between 3 things: the verbal, the typed, and the image. So you can have L-I-O-N, or line, or you can say line, meaning touch the line, or I can see the line. And so I could do that also just as easily in Japanese. So very quickly, I'm touching the line in Japanese, or the chair, or other things like that as language instruction. What is the gain in that? The system is run by an expert consensus. You don't have to put all that data in. Run it through a class, and it'll find all the chairs and everything in Japanese.
Particularly if you have Japanese students in there.
Especially if you have the Japanese students have to normalize it. How do we make the thing work? Everyone has to register, and you register with the site. It's very simple. You go onto our QRECT site and you put in your email address. That's all you have to do. Then normally you take a demographic questionnaire, so you put your name in, and it becomes another little test that you use on the system. You then register with an institution, like you want to be a student at USC or one of the other schools, and the administrator of that school will verify that you can be in there. The institution has to register also. As you can see, this software is pretty complex. It is pretty complex. And then you have course registration. So each school has a set of courses. The courses can be done by terms, and then you have individual sections for that. So we identify that with a course number that's unique for our whole system, for the whole United States. And then an institution is given by their web address, vertical bar or comma, then the course name, like Physics 201 for sc.edu, comma, Physics 201, comma, Fall 2010, comma, J.E. Johnson, Tuesday, Thursday, 2 p.m., and that's given a name. And so we have ways of tracking the courses and the numbers and things like that, when they're given. And then each course has components in it. And so once I'm teaching a course for which a grade is to be given, I have things called activities. Your classes, labs, recitations, homework, exams. And you can add more if you want them. And each one of those has so many meetings. So we have class, the first meeting, lab at fifth meeting, and so forth, and that's how it's tracked. Within each one of those, you have, each one of these activities can have a different weight. And in each one of those, you have different questions. And then you have a course objective. This is to demonstrate that the learning at the required level across the modules, as measured by the graded responses, is what you want. Inadequate performance might require the repeat of those units if you loop back, like I said, for individual instruction. And conclusions, I can't believe I did it on time. The QRECT system can collect vast data based on the exacting progress of these students. And I really want you to think of it with the analogy of the Hubble Space Telescope. It's like we've been looking out there and we're saying, yeah, we got some stars and some bright things and some nebula and got some gases and so forth, but we don't really try to monitor it at high resolution, dynamically in real time. And that will open up, in my opinion, the ability to study all these things. I'm not going to study them, but educators and people that can do all of this analysis can then be turned loose on this with names obfuscated and knowing this is a 5th grade Chinese American student, you know, for whom English is their second language. They're performing this way, this way, this way, in this textbook, in this textbook. You'll be able to track them day by day without knowing who they are or anything else about them. And that opens up an ability to study things that I think is phenomenal. It says end of slideshow. That means y'all can go home and get your cookies. And again, I apologize that this isn't the mass of the neutrino, but if you think about it, education is something that is really, it is the most horrible thing about the United States right now, is we can't educate. And there's got to be some way to look at this and accountability. And so we're going to try to get some new grants, and open this software up, offer it free. Now, we do want some money to kind of help the people do things with it. But,
you know, I was thinking, Joe, I mean, first of all, are there any questions for Dr. Johnson? Then I was thinking while you were doing this, that there are certain things. I got an immediate feeling that languages, that teaching languages, and particularly language arts like English at a lower level, this is something, by the way, my wife is an assessment expert, and that's how I met her, was through Joe. She's in the education assessment business. Have you talked to the people at Insight?
I've mentioned this. In fact, the first time that I met your wife and Lynn, Ann and Lynn, the first conversation we had was with this early classroom that I'd done. I said,
I remember
this
that.
is what I originally did.
But I can imagine that, I can imagine she's doing things right now on the road. I can imagine that this kind of thing boiled down to a focus on language arts. I have a hard time feeling how I would teach physics with it, but
You just ask a question every now and then.
yeah.
I mean, if you're teaching, then you say, can you calculate the thermal conductivity of tin, which has this coefficient, you know, when the temperature is this and so forth? Do it. And they do it right then. And then you know, are these people asleep? Are they thinking about something else? Do they understand the formulas? Can they, you know, and you can ask them quick questions, like, do you understand what I'm talking about? What kind of matter do we not understand? Dark. You know.
Yes.
I have now 3 questions, one of which Joe stimulated. I guess my first question is, in physics and math and probably other sciences, by and large the instructor knows the answer to the questions that he poses. Under those circumstances, what is the use of expert consensus? What's the utility of it?
Well, like on my test today, I made up this test of 32 problems. I had 32 problems in an hour and 15 minutes to work them. I didn't even have to work them. I didn't have to put in wrong answers or how would you probably work it if you were misthinking this way or that way. Just ask it and it's a blank. And they put that in. The computer figures it out, figures out the responses there. And it will get them right. It just will be right.
So the assertion here is that it's a
Saves you time.
labor-saving device.
It's a labor-saving device.
So it has nothing to do with pedagogy.
That doesn't have anything to do with pedagogy. It does it fast for you. You want to do the thermal conductivity, you're going through your notes figuring out the next thing you're going to talk about, and they're working the thermal conductivity problem. And you know, weighted by the bright students, if all 7 of your bright students, 6 of them think that this value is correct, you know, within 0.1% accuracy, that's going to be it. Unless somebody is really smart and they think, whoa, you forgot to adjust for such and such. And then they can object. So it's I don't know if that answered your question. Yes, it's just a thing that speeds you up there.
Yes, he has a second one before. No, you have a
Yeah,
second.
you get 2, 3.
You have made a lot of assertions today, and you haven't showed us an iota of data in support of any of those assertions. And my question is, do you have any plans to acquire data to show that QRECT is superior in any respect to other systems that promote interactive engagement?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing we're trying to do right now, is we've got to have data to prove those things. And I think assessments of the students, what they think, how they're learning, how they perform,
Comparison
tests
with-
compared to when I did it the other way with multiple choice, or in other words, I'm asking the same type of test that I did before when I was lecturing to 300 people, and so forth. And so we can compare that, and we can also let these students, some of them will go back to Jeff's class, and some of his other students will come into my class. So I think by the end of the year, we'll have a good cross-section of, at least they're having an understanding of, if I'm prodded every few minutes to respond, am I learning more? Are these tests harder? Or make a comparison. And I think I'll be working with Jeff some on that. Just take my tests and compare it to some of his. And yes, we do have to study that. But really, that kind of study, Carl, you're absolutely right. That needs to be done by professionals. That's statisticians and educators who know all of these assessment standards and everything, but there's no data to work on yet. So the first thing we got to do is get them the data and get this used in some classrooms where it can be really tested.
Well, I'm not speaking about the data that QRECT produces, but rather QRECT versus other.
Like the clicker
More or less.
system.
For example.
Well, it includes the clicker system because multiple choice is an optional answer here.
Well, yes, it includes the clicker system. The question is whether QRECT features beyond the clicker system have any impact.
Correct. Yeah, I would like to be able to prove that.
Behind you first.
I don't know exactly how to do that yet. My plan is to bring in specialists to study this and find ways to make that a scientific thing.
Just a simple detail, I mean, in a long exam, like 1 hour PT or something like that, I mean, they are answering everything in the iPhone or whatever. How do you know that there are no finding the answer on internet or they are texting between them or something like that?
That they're not cheating or?
Like,
If they can text that fast, they're too smart to worry about it.
They can do it.
they're really fast.
Yeah, they're really fast. In fact, there was a 13-year-old girl who was able to demonstrate with normal typing criteria that she could text at 120 words per minute, which is, to me, this is using only her thumbs, and that's utterly phenomenal. But she's been doing this since she was, I don't know, born or something. But the young people, we have to understand that there's an age coming along now that they're born with iPhones and devices like this in their hands. And this is really somewhat advanced in the sense that we are very awkward. I mean, I'm very awkward trying to put some kind of thing in. But my students in my Physics 201 class have no trouble at all using this. In fact, many of them have their own device, do a lot of texting, and they can put the answers in lickety-split, just very, very fast. As far as the cheating goes, there are some ways to check that. And of course, we can look at correlations between the score that they did for the day and then when those questions are given later. Because what I'm doing is I ask some questions during the day, and then I give them again on the exam. And I can look back and say, well, Bob answered 5 of these questions during class, but he couldn't answer any of them on the exam. You know, the exams are monitored. Now we get into things like, do they go on the internet, bring up a dual screen, da, da, da. One of the reasons that I prefer the iTouch is what we're really concentrating on is short answer. If you want to do the Macbeth thing, then you go home to the computer and that's more like a homework problem. And it's then sent to other students, and their homework problem is to assess it. In the class, you don't really want to come in with a laptop. I mean, it takes up your whole space. So the idea is you pull something out of your pocket and you type in the answer. And of course, you know, we could do this to, as y'all may know, I gave a talk sometime back from game theory and how you could actually use this for things like investment analysis and using the past experience of people, you know, to look at things like drilling for oil, how much this PhD geologist knows about past cost analysis and so forth, and you weight those things in the future and so forth like that, or faculty meetings.
Forget that. No.
You're always doing dangerous things. And here again, I kind of would have the feeling that you might even lower with that approach the quality of education, because it's getting more and more superficial. Physics is where it's getting more and more superficial. The questions you are asking, short answers. And physics is really very often about really kind of sitting and thinking about a problem for hours, and then if you get to something new, then you kind of have the feeling, okay, you are really kind of good to investigate physics. You are killing that with that, and even the student will go home saying, okay, I got a good grade today in class, I don't have to do anything anymore, because I could answer these fast, superficial questions very easily. But we all know from Millionaire, if you ask the audience is always very bad if the question is difficult. And these are the questions you even said yourself you would kind of cut out of your test. So what are we gaining then?
Well, I agree with you, but you have to know that there are long responses here. And there are places where you draw this complex diagram, and you just take your camera and take a photograph of it, and that's your submission. And that's your work. So you do your calculations. This is the PhD exam. And so what you do is you sit in there in the room, and you work out this rather complicated tunneling problem for nanosystems or something like that. And you show all the work, you take your photograph, and you submit it. And that's